Hey everyone, Cursed here. We're going to be looking at a mono-red Chandra tribal deck. Started off as Oathbreaker, but got a little out of control and became an EDH deck by accident. This is from Donut Guilty. They say that they're low on mana production, and when I tried to test it, it went horribly. 2 land, opening hand, and never saw another mountain. I'm having a hard time taking anything out, so I was hoping to get some suggestions on what they think would be better off without, what the deck would be better off before without, and mana producers I can slot in. All right, so pretty standard mono red deck. We have one Chandra as our commander and tons of Chandras in the back. And if you're like me, the first thing you immediately saw that is that we have 29 lands. And when I come down here, we can see the majority of our deck is somewhere between, so that's 13, is just shy of 6 mana. Average mana value is, oh no, main deck is 2.8 with lands and 3.96 without lands. Yeah, this is very, very high. I think the twos and the threes are trying to outpace it, but regardless of how many twos and threes you have, a meta curve is not supposed to look flat. You need to be going lower here. Now, without going in too much into it, we can easily see why, because we have a lot of 6 drops. And we have what I would prescribe as too few lands. We've got some mana ramp here, but if you add it together, you want to get close to like 40. But in a deck that's trying to cast all of these high mana spells, we need more lands. Oh boy, do we need more lands. So let's really, really quickly think about things like our mana rocks. So, if I remember correctly, mana rock? Can we look by mana rock? No. There is a way we can look by mana rock. Say Scryfall, search by mana rock. There, Oracle tag mana rock. And then we're going to say color. I always forget how to do the commander color. So let's do it like this. We're going to do commander red, and then we're going to paste this in. Okay, so now we're going to go here and we're going to go for mana value and see what our options are at low mana. Skipping the unbelievably expensive ones. Arcane Signet, Cold Steel Heart, Ebony Fly, Felwar Stone feels wasted here, but Fire Diamond, Guardian Idol, Fracture Power Stone, any of these things that tap for any mana repeatedly are going to be really nice in your deck. Liquid Metal Torque is probably going to be good. I assume you have Artifact Destruction. Yeah, so Liquid Metal Torque for sure. Anything else that jumps out? Prismatic Lens is fine. Thought Vessel is fine. I would put some of these in. They will ramp you forward, and they don't hurt too much. Then we're obviously going to put in, I would say, at least 6 more lands at this rate, but that's going to be kind of hard to immediately. It's hard to find out exactly how many lands you want, but I would aim to have about 34 to 36 here, and at least 10 mana producing artifacts. All right, let's talk about cuts. So there's a few that I saw instantly that are going to be really, really easy. And that is some of your Chandras are better than others. Now I recognize the idea that you're playing a Chandra deck and you want to play as many Chandras as possible, but some of them are just not as good. So let's go bottom to top for mana efficiency. Chandra Pyrogenius is 6 mana to shock someone, or 6 mana to deal 4 damage to a creature. She needs 3 consecutive turns to hit 6 damage onto one player and each creature they control, which is not weak, but it ain't strong. Chandra's Hope's Beacon is a more modern Chandra. It is very, very strong. As long as you have instants and sorceries that are strong, which you definitely do, so you're doing well there. Flame Color is okay. Um, I think the feeling of having two 3/1s each turn with haste, it's a good feeling. But in Commander, they're usually going to get blocked by bigger creatures, and 6 damage and two 3/1s without evasion, it's not that strong. Her 0 of discarding your hand and drawing an extra one, that's okay. Drawing a whole new hand is good. You don't really have a lot of discard synergy that I can see. I think there's a few phoenixes that'll come back from the grave, which is great, but I think by the time you get to this mana, your hand's going to be pretty empty, and so this is going to be like a draw 1 or draw 2 or draw 3, which is good, but is it worth paying 6 mana for? I'm not so sure. Flame's Fury is a jumpstart one. +1 is a shock, -2. Okay, so this is almost identical to Pyrogenius. I would also cut Flame's Fury. She's just not where you want to be. You're going to be looking down creatures that are, upwards of 5 or 6 toughness, and she's just not going to cut it. Flame's Catalyst bolts each opponent. I don't dislike that. You could get that ability on a much smaller mana investment, but it's not bad. You may cast red instant or sorcery card from your graveyard if that spell. Yeah, so you still have to pay mana, right? You're not going to have mana after casting this. So she can't protect herself. She can't take out blockers or creatures. And you need additional mana to use her -2. I would cut that one as well. Chandra, Bold Pyromancer. Adds 2 red mana, deals 2 damage to target player. So kind of Torch of Defiance. 3 damage to target creature to bolt something. Yeah, this one is also unfortunately pretty weak. Once again, these ultimates seem to be very kind of deal an absurd amount of damage to a player if you were playing in a 20 life format. At 40 life, doing a quarter of their health and destroying all their creatures isn't bad. But the fact that you need her for 3 consecutive turns, and during that time she's not doing anything, I guess part of my question would be like, what can you pull out with 2 mana? And you do have 2 mana is one of your higher mana costs, so there is a lot you can do. But I would say she's probably not that strong either. Chandra Awakened Inferno is fantastic. This is exactly the kind of ability you want in Commander. This is exactly the kind of ability that you want in a deck like this. You play her, you plus her, and that's all you need to know. She is permanent damage for the rest of the game. She wipes the board, and she single targets creatures. This is perfect. And our last 6 mana Chandra is discard a card if the red card. Okay. So I think this is just an old planeswalker, and back in the day, planeswalkers were bad. And I think this is unfortunately just a bad planeswalker. The prospect of discarding a card in order to deal 4 damage as a plus is pretty rough. It would be really nice if you had like Blazing Root Walla to discard to this and get to cast it, but that's not where we're at. We're more in the phase of, I don't know. This is costing you cards you don't have at this point in the game. I would cut her too. I'm gonna just look at the 5 mana ones. I think the 4 mana and below I'm generally fine with. Yeah, these are all fine. One might argue they're not like amazing, but I don't think that like Chandra Shorts, Torture Defiance, all of these are fine. They're perfectly playable, and you're playing a Chandra deck, so you want to play them. So I think 3 to 4 mana is your sweet spot. Really quickly looking at the 2/5 drops. Um, Chandra Nalar, that art is so good. Is the only reason I'm going to tell you maybe keep this. Is that has really great art. But unfortunately, she's just not strong enough. She does very, very little, and doubling her abilities with one of your cards isn't going to really cut it. And charge a Heart of Fire, discard your hand, exile the top 3 until end of turn. That's really interesting. I like that. Even though there's a really big mana cost to get her down, The fact that she works even though you have no cards in hand or are low on cards is much nicer than the other one. She shocks. Her second plus one shocks any target, not just players. Already, I'm a big fan. That allows you to put her down and immediately take out a creature. And then her -9 doesn't matter. Ultimates win you the game anyway. So and you have plenty of things to do with it. So that's perfect. So most of my cuts are already in the 6 mana range here. So we've reduced the mana cost tremendously. Um, Cinder Hellion feels like another cut. I get why it's here. It's just more damage, and I do like that. But there's a lot of other options of creatures that ETB and deal damage. I'm not going to look through them because right now I think what you're looking for is to add lands and ramp. So I don't want to push too hard on finding replacement cards. But if you really like this ability, there are creatures at 3 mana that do precisely the same thing. They have weaker bodies to make up for it, but oftentimes that's not going to matter as much. Blocks becomes blocked by a creature, deals 3 damage. So this is a 6 mana 4/4 that your opponent will not block, or it is a wall that holds back almost all medium level creatures. I would probably cut this. I think it's cool. I think it plays in a really interesting space that you don't see on Magic cards. But if you're familiar with Phyrexian Obliterator or Phyrexian Vindicator, the text on this card really just says it's unblockable, and that if you don't attack with it, your opponents won't attack into you. So I don't know. 6 mana is a lot for that, so I wouldn't necessarily keep this. Once again, your low mana stuff is very strong. I'm a big fan of it. Furious Reprisal should just be. I just recently looked at these. We're gonna look for a red sorceries. Damage each creature. Yeah. So if I didn't want to recommend too many cards because you already have a lot to take out to put in lands. But if you want effects that deal damage across the board, and I get that it has Chandra in the art, and I don't want to take that away from you. If you are considering playing non-Chandra art cards, I would use these. So let's go down to 3 mana. Anger of the Gods, Brotherhood's End. Let's see. Flame Break. You can play Flame Break pretty well here. Um, I can't play Radiant Flames, Slag Storm, Sweltering Suns, Chain Reaction, and there's one more. Storm's Wrath. These are all particularly cheap in real world money cards that will wipe the board a lot better. Once again, your main deck is planeswalkers or creatures that can come back from the dead, or creatures that benefit from non-combat damage being dealt. Um, so with that in mind, like just make them a little stronger, and I think that's fine. Craterize, it has Chandra's name in it. Okay, there is an option. There's a version of this deck that you are playing it for the flavor of putting Chandra into everything, and I get that, and I don't want to push back against that. So if that's going to be the case in the end, I would still probably take out. You still have to cut a few. Yes, Cinder Hellion has Chandra in the flavor. I should have noticed that more when I was going through it. Unfortunately, you do need to make cuts. So instead of taking these cards out and putting non-Chandra cards in, you're going to have to cut some of them, even though they're Chandra themed. And what I'm going to suggest is going from the top downwards. And by that I mean the highest mana costs first, and then the lower mana costs second. Um, Things like the one exception I'm going to say is I didn't talk about Angrath Marauders, and I think this is the cheating card because after I just said that, you and I both know that Chandra is not in this art or in the flavor. We have this card because it's very, very strong. And I don't think that's a problem. I think you should definitely play Angrath's Marauders. All of these City on Fire, Fire Emancipation effects that double damage, you should definitely play them. But in the meantime, I think you should cut a lot of your higher end of Chandras so that your Chandras have higher quality and that you can cast them. I think you should put some mana rocks in so you can cast them faster. You should add some lands to even it out. And then up to you. I would change some of these burn spells that hit one or two creatures or craterize and then turn them into board wipes in red. I hope that helps. I love a good Planeswalker tribal deck, and I love Oathbreaker, so I'm a big fan of what you did here. So I hope these hope this advice helps, and I hope you can figure out how to make your deck function a little better. Thanks.